Hi there. In this Microsoft Office Excel video, I'm going to take a quick look at data validation in the form of drop-down lists, as well as ensuring that we enter the right kind of data into particular cells. We'll also look at absolute references and VLOOKUP, and I'll use those two things in conjunction with data validation. So this will be kind of a little application that we'll build, which will be a point of sale application. So what I'll do is allow a sales clerk to enter a quantity of an item for sale. It has to be a whole number, greater than 0. And maybe we'll have a limit on a quantity that a customer can buy as well. We'll allow that sales clerk to choose an item from a list of items, which is also data validation. And then we'll have the price of those items pop in automatically using something called a VLOOKUP. Basically, it allows us to look up a price without actually having to physically look up a price. It'll be looked up from an arrangement of data. So I'm going to quickly fire up Excel. Again, I'm using Office 365. When I open up Excel, it brings me to something called the Backstage view. We can create a new template. I'm going to create a new blank workbook. Now, this is the data that I'll have my actual sales data on. So I'm just going to call this sales. This is the sheet that I'll have my sales on, that is. And then I'm going to create a new sheet called data. So this is the data that will eventually populate that sales sheet. So first of all, I'm going to allow a user to enter quantity. So we'll take a quick look at data validation for this. So the quantity has to be greater than 0, and we're going to put a limit of 100. So a customer can only buy 100 of a thing. So basically, all of these cells under A1, I want to have those rules applied. They can only choose a whole number, greater than 0, greater than 1, less than 100 for all of the cells in the spreadsheet all the way down to the bottom. So I'm going to go Control Shift on my keyboard and then down arrow. That'll select from my presently selected cell. So that will not include the word quantity. That's the reason I'm starting on A2. And then when I hit the down arrow, it'll go all the way down to the bottom of the spreadsheet, which is row million, whatever. So I have all of those cells selected so that I can apply the rule to all of those cells. So I don't have to apply it each time. It's already preset for those cells. So I go to data. My data validation is this one right here. It tells me what that is. I click on my little drop down. I choose data validation. And for the settings, I'm going to say a whole number. And I want it to be greater than 1. We can't sell 0 of something, and less than 100. And for input message, I'm going to say enter a quantity. And for my input message, I'll say greater than 1. I'll say whole number. Greater than 1. So this is just the message to the person who's using this spreadsheet. Less than 100. And then for an error, if they enter anything less, I'll say invalid data. And I'll say it again. Enter a whole number. Greater than 1, less than 100. So if they enter the wrong value, then they'll get this alert. This thing will pop up when any of these cells throughout the entire spreadsheet is selected, this first one. So I choose OK. And there's my little message because I have a cell selected. So we can see all of those cells are now affected by that rule simply because of that message. If I go all the way down to the bottom, Control down, you see that all the way down to the bottom of the spreadsheet, we have that data validation. So if I go and I enter, for example, 0 and hit tab, I get that little alert. Enter a whole number greater than 1, less than 100. I choose retry. I'll type in 0.5, whole number, or retry, type in 101, retry, type in 100. It allows 100. So I'm just going to type in 2, 3, 6, whatever, bunch of quantities. Now this next one, I want to choose an item that we offer for sale from a list, and we can protect that list if we like. We'll get into that later on, but I'm going to type in the word product. So this is the thing that we're actually selling. And again, we only want the salesperson to choose an item that exists on a list. We don't want them to just enter any old thing. They don't want to be able. We don't want them to be able to pull something out of their pocket and sell it or something like that. So that's what I'm using this data sheet for. I'm going to type in product here just so we know what these are. This does not serve any function. I'm also going to type in a price. And I'm going to sell some tools. So I'll say a hammer, machine, ball peen hammer, sledgehammer. And I'm just going to type in a bunch of tools. So I'll just pause my video while I do that. So I've got all of my products selected. I'm just going to double click this so that we have our columns wide enough. Now I want to be able to select these items from a list. So that's another type of data validation. So what that requires is that you name the list first of all. You don't need to name it if it's on the same spreadsheet as the data that we're pulling from the list, but if it's on a different spreadsheet, we do have to name it. So I'm going to select A2, and I'm going to do the same thing I did previously. Control Shift, that selects as well as navigates. When I hit my down arrow, it selects to the bottom of my list, not to the bottom of the document like I had previously, because now I have data in this list. If I still have Control Shift selected. If I just click my just tap my down arrow one more time, that selects everything. So if I add more products in the future, they'll be part of this same list that we'll be allowed to choose products from when we go to sell these items. So we want to name that range, and the way you name a range is you just type the name in here. So I'm just going to call this product, and I'll press enter. Now you can tell if my range is named. If I click on one of these cells, the range name does not pop up. If I select multiple cells, still does not pop up. But if I select that exact same range, click Shift down, and then down again, you see that range pops up. That name for the range pops up, I should say. Also, we have under formulas, we have this name manager, which keeps track of every range or cell that we've named. And if we need to change the name or delete the named range, we can do that. It doesn't delete the material, it just deletes the name and the reference. And if we need to choose a new range, we can also do that here. So there's a bunch of ways we can manipulate that. I won't get into that though. You can try that out on your own. So I'll choose close. So it's called product, all lowercase. So now I go back to my sales sheet, and I'll do the same thing I did over here. I'll go Control Shift down. So that selects from just below my heading for that column all the way down to the very last cell in the spreadsheet for that column. And again, I'll click on my data validation. And for settings, this time I'm going to choose list. And the way we pick up that list is we type in equals, and we actually have to be aware of what we call the thing. So you have to double check. I know I call it product because I always do. And for my input message, I'll say choose product from the list. And unfortunately, if they do not choose a product from the list, there is no error. So this thing doesn't actually control what they choose. It only suggests what they choose. So they can enter a new product. There's no way around that with Excel. We have to develop a full-blown database if we want to add that kind of data validation. But this will serve our purposes nicely. So I choose OK. Now notice we get a little drop down. If I click on one of those cells, I can pick, oh, let me just double check my data validation. Control Shift down. I'm not getting that little alert, so I want to double check what's happening there. Yeah, it's still there. I'm not sure why we're not getting the comment there. I'll choose OK. And I'll pick one of my products. And I'll go through and I'll pick a product from the list until I have all products selected for my next example here. All the way down. So I'm just going to pause the video while I do that. Alright, so I have all of my products selected. Again, in real life you would pick up the ones that you actually are selling at that moment, but just for the sake of argument, and I'm just going to quickly add a bunch of quantities in here as well. Again, we would be actually entering the real quantities as we sell. Until I have all of my a quantity for all of the items I've entered. So now I want to get the price in here. So this is where we get into the VLOOKUP. So I'll explain what needs to happen. So back here in the data, I'm going to add my prices to the product here. So I'll say, I'll just add a price for each of these products. So I'm just going to pause while I do that. So I've added all of my prices. I'm just going to quickly format that as currency so we know what we're looking at there. And so now the way that this stands, if I was to sell an item to a customer, I'd say, oh, this customer has brought up 2 hammers to the counter. I'll go and I'll look up the data and I see that the hammers are $4. Then I go back and I enter $4. So that does not seem like an ideal way between going and looking at the data and coming back and looking at sales and entering the data. You might enter the wrong amount. You'll forget by the time you get back there. You might have to go and look again. So we want Excel to look up that price for us. And the way it's arranged is in a vertical arrangement. That is, the price is next to the product name. So that's known as a VLOOKUP. Vertical, it goes across the rows. So to enter VLOOKUP, what I'm going to do is add another name. So for this array all the way down to the bottom of the spreadsheet is already called product. I'm going to select this stuff again all the way down to the bottom of the spreadsheet. So Control Shift. Again, the reason for that is we're going to add more products and prices in the future. So that selects both rows all the way down to the bottom of the spreadsheet. So if we add 1,000,000 products, as we add more products all the way up to 1,000,000, they'll be part of that drop-down list that people can pick from. Now, I'm going to name that range. This time, it's going to be called Products and Prices. And I'll press Enter. So we've got a named range here all the way down to the bottom of the spreadsheet, and then that's also within this named range. So we can have names within names within names within names. And again, we can see those names under Formulas and then Name Manager. So there's our 2 names. So to add that VLOOKUP, I go back to Sales. I type in equals, equals, not minus. equals, type in V for VLOOKUP. I'll just use my drop down arrow, my down arrow on my keyboard to pick up VLOOKUP, and I'll hit tab. And then it tells me what we need in this little key. So the lookup value is this B2. So I can just, right now this is obscuring B2. So I'm just going to type in B2. And then the table array is what the name we gave that table. So I'm going to type in comma, and then it's P for product, and I'll type in R for product. There we go, and there it is, products and prices. So I can click on that. I can double click on it. Equals VLOOKUP B2 products and prices. Now the column index number is how many columns over from the lookup, the column index number. Sorry, from the lookup value is the number that we're trying to get. So back in the data spreadsheet, we have our products on one column, and then we have the prices on the next. So that's 2 over. 1 is products, 2 is prices. So I'm going to type in 2 and then comma. Does this have to be exact? Now we're picking those product names from a drop-down list, so they're going to be exact. So we can use this false. It's an exact match. So I'm going to double click. I'm going to close my bracket. I'm going to press enter, and then the price pops in. And again, I'm going to just select the entire column, and I'll choose currency. So now when I autofill down, those prices will automatically pop in for those items that I've entered. And in the future, we're actually going to have more items that we add to the spreadsheet. This might be all of our sales till the end of time. On one spreadsheet in real life, you'd probably have one per day or something like that. So I'm just going to select a bunch of cells all the way down. So now you see that we have this NA. Until we choose a product, we don't get a price. So that's VLOOKUP, and we can look up a variety of values as well. And when we get to our pivot table example, I'll show you that. So we'll have salespeople that exist in cities, that exist in provinces, that exist in countries. So we'll get all of that data automatically looked up when we select a salesperson. Now the next thing I want to do is calculate a subtotal. So I'll say subtotal, and this is nothing new. This is just a simple formula. Equals quantity times price. I press enter. Now I can autofill this down. Again, when I autofill down, what you'll see happens is as I autofill down to the next cell, it'll be A2 times A3 times C3. So as I drag that down, you see that the row number increments. So that's what autofill does for us with a formula. If we drag down, it increments the row. If we drag across, it increments the column name. So I'm just going to autofill that all the way down as far as I want to go until I get bored. I'll just go back up to the top here. Now I want to calculate a tax amount. So I'm going to type in tax, and in the next column I'm going to type in my actual tax rate. So we're selling these items to customers. They're the end customer of this product. So in my region, it's provincial as well as federal sales tax. So I'm going to type in equals subtotal times that rate. Equals subtotals times, which is shift 8, that rate. And I press enter. Now remember, that rate is, we want it just to be in one cell. We don't want to have to copy that decimal 1, 2. We don't need to do that. But remember, if we go to autofill down, it'll increment that to be D3, which is correct. It'll be D3 times decimal 1, 2, but it'll also increment that, so it'll be F2, which the tax number doesn't reside in. So this is something called absolute references. And what absolute reference means is that when we autofill a formula, we can lock the reference of either the row or the column of one of the cells that we're referencing. So it's in the situation that we autofill, we do not want that row number and or that column name to increment. So to add that, I just click right on my cell there. You can just hit F4. And what happens is a little dollar sign pops in, so it means that F will not increment. The column names will not increment. 1 will not increment. The row names will not increment. I press enter, and now as I drag down, you'll see the next formula is D3 times F1. It just keeps on referencing that cell. And if I drag down, I get that text amount. I'll just drag down until I get bored. And then I'll also have my grand total. So that equals my subtotal plus my tax. So that's basically data validation. Again, we added data validation to force a particular value in a cell. Again, a value greater than 1, less than 100. We also added data validation so people could choose an item from a list. And then we used VLOOKUP to get that price. And then again, absolute references so that when we autofill, that cell is the one that's being referenced, no other cell, as we autofill. Thanks so much for watching.